Okay, giving you a double dose of the podcast this week. Coming to you late night, Friday night. We're gonna call it prime time. How about that? Uh, Catering to the West Coast audience a little bit. We'll wrap up our conference previews with the final two of the 13 conferences I've previewed thus far. If you missed any of those previews, obviously all of those are available here on YouTube as well as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Plus the write-ups, those are available on the website as well. Be sure to check those out. Over the course of the last month, I've talked about as many as 100 different impact players in various leagues, dozens of programs and coaches, highlighted a few key matchups even upcoming in conference play. So a lot of good information out there, whether you want to listen to the podcast, you want to watch on YouTube, or like I said, even comb through the websites and catch up on some light reading. So if you missed any of that, like I said, be sure to go back and check it out. All the platforms, and then plus the write-ups and videos on pdspicks.com, where obviously everything I post is available. So I'm probably doing this episode a little bit in reverse order, previewing the MIHL and the KLAA right now, live right on YouTube, and then going to the MIHL Media Day on Sunday and the KLAA Media Day on Monday. Might have been better off to go to the media days and then do the previews, but nonetheless, excited, wanted to get this out, wanted to put a bow on the conference previews as well. And really, worst case scenario, it's more content for you guys to digest. Being expected to be at both of those media days, we will have exclusive video content, interviews with players, coaches, whoever's available at those events. We'll be sure to share those on the platform as well and make that available to you on PD's Picks social media: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Threads, wherever you want to find me. So really, win-win, right? You get content now, you'll get content later, and yeah, this is what the high school hockey season is going to be, man. Something new every day, lots of stuff going on. So obviously excited. Uh, okay, where do I want to start here? As far as the KLAA and the MIHL go, it's not even really debatable in my mind. These are the top two conferences in Michigan high school hockey. Um, if you want to come at me with that, if you want to debate and try, feel free. But I just think it's pretty clear cut at this point that those are the top two conferences in our state. There's a lot. What do I want to say? Okay. Um, to kind of shift gears here again, I'm not going to put a time limit on it, especially with these two being as much as there is to get to with both of these conferences. I'm not going to set a time limit on it. I just got a bunch of great stuff here. I'm going to go till I run out, and then we'll move on. So I'm going to start with the KLAA. I'll finish up with the MIHL. So as far as the KLAA goes, it looks like there's some changes going on, obviously, within the conference. The two divisions, East and West. Now, what was it? Used to be lopsided, I believe. Last season there was 6 in one and 5 in the other. Obviously, with the co-op of Livonia Franklin and Livonia Churchill merging to become Livonia United, that balances out the divisions there to 5 and 5. Kind of an unfortunate co-op, in my opinion. You'd love to see both of these programs remain standalones and be healthy in their own rights. But, just with it being such a proud hockey community there in Livonia. But it's a bit of a harsh reality too, I think, with where we are with hockey in the state of Michigan, just in terms of the sheer number of hockey players across the state and things like that, that obviously it's even impacting some of the tried and true programs here that have been around for a long time, even in the Metro Detroit area. So like I said, it's unfortunate, but I definitely get it. I understand. It's just kind of a bummer because those two, especially during my time in the KLAA, fun rivalries there with the Livonia schools and things like that. So I do think that'll be a pretty strong co-op, actually, with those two being able to merge forces and team up there. Churchill won 15 games last season. Bryce Brown is just a junior. He had 29 points in 25 games. Austin Ferris is another kid there that, those two, Brown and Ferris, finished 2 and 3 in scoring for the Chargers last season. So to potentially have both of those guys coming back, then you merge with Franklin. Franklin's got a kid like Caleb Curto who, led the led led the Patriots in scoring there. So obviously with that co-op of the Red Stallions, there's a lot of promise there and some pieces that I think could, within that merge, provide and end up being a pretty strong co-op in year one. Looking at some, obviously the next door neighbor there in Livonia Stevenson, who has won that East Division for as long as I can remember. I didn't go too far back uh, on the hub there, but I do think there's a bit of a chance that could change this season, just with where the Spartans are at. They're going to be crazy young. I mean, young in a way that like no program in the state is, let alone a blue blood like Stevenson. I think I heard at one point they're only expected to have one senior on the entire team. So senior night could be a pretty short one there come February. So that it's just it's kind of bizarre to think about any program in the state, like I said, to have just one senior on the squad, let alone Stevenson. So I think it'll be a bit of a growing season, for Coach Dave Mitchell there, working and molding, young and developing players, things like that. It could be a bit of a challenge, but obviously Dave is one of the best in the game and at doing that type of stuff and working with young kids and developing them and getting them to a level that top level high school programs play at. So they do get guys back like Derek Buchanan. He, as I mentioned, would be that lone senior. I like Owen Hall a lot. He's that prototypical Stevenson forward. Saw a lot of him in the MDHL that I liked. He's that gritty, hardworking, high motor guy who's just constantly going on the forecheck. Like I said, the kind of the archetype of a lot of Stevenson forwards over the last couple of years. Colin Strobel, I think this will be his first year playing high school hockey. To have him on the blue line, I like him a lot. He was another kid in the MDHL this past fall, who can be, I'm going to say, sneaky good prospect. He just plays the game the right way, does a lot of the little things you like to see as a defenseman. Doesn't try to get too flashy with it or try to do too much, which I think can be a bit of a problem with some of your high-end defensemen who want to force it a little bit. They want to make a big play. They want to hit that cross ice pass. They want to push the back end and kind of expose themselves or take some chances. I don't see that in Colin Strobel. I think he's like I said, really self-aware is probably a good way to put it. He knows what he's capable of. He knows how his style can impact the game and doesn't really expose himself in the sense of the game or expose weaknesses or open up lanes to the net or things like that. So even with all that uncertainty around Stevenson too, I still think they're probably the favorite to win the East. Just given you look at some of the other teams on that side of the conference. Livonia United, like I said, may be able to compete in some spots, but one team I think that can be sneaky this season on that half of the conference is Salem. So I think that's one who some of the pieces they have coming back. Carson Patel was a point per game guy last year as a junior. I could see him kind of taking the reins of that offense and elevating his game to another level. Plus Cam Eichner, Abel Dubnik on the back end. Those are guys I've talked about earlier in the podcast as well. I really liked them as a pair. They were a pair in the MDHL at one point. To then have them kind of continue building that familiarity, that chemistry, carry it into the now regular season. Salem, it's just a gritty style team too. With all those guys I highlighted. Also, there's a couple other key returners that sprinkle in the mix as well. So Salem's going to have a lot coming back, which I think makes them a potential threat to Stevenson championship there on the East Division. Salem, I know firsthand. We saw it last year, and going head to head with them. It's a program that just has a certain identity about it. Super scrappy, hardworking bunch. They really are. They just got dogs in that lineup. Is the best way I can put it. Just a scrappy bunch year in and year out. But there's also moments where they can flash an ability and make some pretty plays where it's a tic-tac-toe setup on a power play goal and things like that too. So as gritty and hard-nosed as they can also flash and dash a little bit when they get the opportunity to, which I think makes them a pretty dangerous team there in the KLAA. So I don't know that I'm ready just yet to pick them, but at least I'll at least admit the potential for them to top Stevenson in that and win that East Division there. But obviously we'll get into that a little bit more as we go here, as I take a break and hydrate for a minute. Whew. All right, so as we get into the West, as much as I think the East could be pretty cut and dry, I think the West, on the other hand, is going to be pretty wild. Brighton, obviously the team to beat in the West, basically returned all of its key players from a season ago. Hartland was young last season, may still be on the younger side this season as well, but obviously more experienced. And Coach Rick Gadwa just knows how to win in this conference. Knows the team. He's been around for a long time, knows the teams, knows the programs, and things like that. Howell, lots of people are talking about them already in the high school hockey circles on how good they could be this year. So that puts a little seed of doubt in the West Division. Northville's a team I love under second year coach Ryan Ossenmacher. And then you got Novi to put a cherry on top of all that. They could have as many as 15 players back from last season. So there's an element to each one of these teams on the West side where you could potentially make a case for just about all of them to end up as the division champ. So Brighton is the favorite, a pretty obvious favorite, and rightfully so. Cam Duffney, I've said it before, may be the best player in the state this year. He's dynamic offensively in a way that I'm not sure anyone this year is capable of doing. Lane Pettit, Charlie Birchfield, Levi Penela, all those guys were members of Team Michigan last spring. You can't overlook that. Aiden Sider, Ryan Watkins, Mason Blow, those are all huge returners you got coming back who obviously have a ton of experience coming off that state finals run just a season ago. With a lot of those guys being in their senior seasons, they're going to want to put, the exclamation point on their high school careers and be a pretty highly motivated bunch. So there's always high expectations for Brighton, but this season does feel a little bit different because normally those expectations are internal. In the locker room, we expect a lot of ourselves. This season, it feels a lot like others outside of Brighton expect the Bulldogs to win. That could make things a bit uncomfortable, I'd say. It's an unusual challenge, I think, for Coach Kurt Kavisto. Could be a high stress, high pressure. I wrote in the blog on pdspicks.com, when everyone expects you to be the best, what happens when a penalty doesn't go your way and costs you a crucial goal? What happens when you're trailing after 2 periods to a team like Novi? What happens if you drop a game to Northville or Howell? When those expectations exist, my fear is you grip the stick a little tighter, mistakes get amplified, and things can snowball kind of quickly for you there. So the challenge for Brighton will be, can you kind of handle that adversity? Can you overcome that adversity? And I'd absolutely like to think they can, right? With the just amount of game experience they have. A team like Brighton obviously is not only capable of winning the KLAA, but getting over the hump and winning a state title this season too. There, I said it. I think there's a team capable of beating Detroit Catholic Central. So, talk about expectations. There they are, man. There's potential there. This team, with the experience and the talent that they have, there's enough pieces in place there to at least plant that seed of potential. So let me shift my focus here to some other teams in the West. Heartland, Ian Castamo is at the forefront of that offense. I think guys like Luca Di Girolamo, Drew Lesperance, there's a lot of potential in those two in particular to make pretty significant jumps in their development from last season to this season. Both of them just had 8 points last season, and I think both are capable of being 25 points plus each as a junior and a sophomore. So I think both of those guys are ripe for big development jumps here in 23-24. The Eagles have just had a lot of younger guys that look to be stepping into larger roles coming up. Brady Hubenschmidt in goal being one of those guys as well. He's just one of a few goaltending options that Rick Gadwa has there. He's got a couple goalies, I think, at his disposal, which is usually a good problem to have. I'd rather have 2 or 3 goalies capable of being in net as opposed to, trying to piecemeal it together and get away with without a goalie, so to speak. So to have options in net is a luxury that not many have around the state. So a couple more teams here. Sorry, I gotta take a quick break here. So a couple other teams. Obviously, I mentioned Howell, Joel Escala, Marco Wolf, Ben Hutari. Those aren't just returners. The returners who produced a lot of offense last season. Chad Patilla put up 19 points from the blue line as a freshman. May have been one of the best defenders among the class of 2026. He'll be around for a while. That's a guy a guy like Rocky Johnson can build around for the next couple seasons. The Highlanders, they're going to beat some teams. They're going to beat some teams that others might count them out, where I don't want to say you'd ever write off Howell, but looking at like a Brighton Howell matchup, it's pretty in years past pretty easy to pencil in Brighton as a dub there. But I think there's going to be a couple of those instances this year where people might write off Howell and then they end up stealing one. So it could be an real exciting season there for the Highlanders. Another team, Northville, that's another team kind of in that same vein. They were 10, 15, and 2 last season. I think they could win as many as 17 or 18 games this season in year 2 under Ryan Ossenmacher. He's done a great job of just getting that team to play the right way, disciplined, scrappy hockey, keeping things simple. Just pucks out of the D zone and pucks deep into the offensive zone. I think they'll be a real strong this season with guys like Cole Lafleur and Connor Bazatsky coming back. But then plus there's potential newcomers like Brady Couture, Alex Kasapis. Those two were solid guys in the MDHL this fall. Rumblings of another one or multiple AAA kids potentially making that jump to the Mustangs this winter. So when you hear things like that, it leads me to believe the tides are turning a little bit within the school itself. Kids are starting to buy in and believe in what you're building. So to see the trickle effect starting to pick up and Ossenmacher starting to get some of those guys to come in and be a part of the program, that's a good thing, not just for this season, but a great thing for years to come. So I really like where Northville is at this year, and then obviously love the potential for the future. So I'll round it out here, obviously, with Novi. Novi won 14 games last season. Gabe Armstrong, Luke Londo, Jackson Kinter, all coming back. They accounted for a third of the team's offense last season. So for a guy like Coach Dane Barazzini getting them back, usually it's the inverse. Yeah, usually you're losing a third of your offense. In this case, he's bringing back a good chunk there. So I'll wrap it up with conference predictions. And as I was kind of typing up my show sheet and everything, I got to this section and couldn't make up my mind, so I just left it blank. And so I figured I'd wing it on the spot here. And out of the East, it really is tough to go against Stevenson. I think Salem is going to give them a run for their money, and it's going to come down to, however that head-to-head matchup goes. So now I'm going to take the Rocks. We'll go with Salem out of the East. Ultimately, I think chalk prevails in the West. I can't go against Brighton right now. I'm gonna steer into the skid there. As I was mentioning the expectations, I'm gonna pile on the expectations with the Bulldogs and take them to not only win the division but then come out on top of the conference as well. So, okay, that's it for the KLAA, and I've now saved the best for last of the 13 conferences. Yes, that's right. The MIHL is the best conference in all of Michigan high school hockey. I think I speak for most of the state when I say that. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's true. It's like admitting the SEC is better than the Big Ten, or Canada is better than the US at hockey. Like, we don't want it to be true. Those of us on the outside, those of us that aren't in the MIHL wish it was different, but it's just not. Member teams of the MIHL have accounted for 34 of the past 60 state champions. CC, Rice, Cranbrook, they made it a clean sweep of state titles back in 2021. To further illustrate the league's dominance in high school hockey, I mentioned the MIHL and the KLAA being the number 1 and number 2 conferences in our sport. The MIHL KLAA Showcase, which was established back in 2017, similar structure and setup to the Big Ten ACC Challenge in college basketball, right? The top 2 conferences, the MIHL has won it every year since the event started 7 years ago. The best of the best of the best. And what the MIHL is to high school hockey, Detroit Catholic Central has been to the MIHL. CC has dominated the league, undefeated in MIHL play dating back to, I believe, February of 2021. And we're in the midst of a historic run for Coach Brandon Kalnicki and the Shamrocks. 4 state championships, completely dominant, shut everybody out en route to a state title last winter. I think what we're seeing and experiencing in real time is the equivalent of what Cranbrook did in the 2000s, what Trenton did for much of the 90s and 2000s. We're in the midst of an exceptionally wild run of dominance by CC. And I'm not going to go on social media with any hot takes about how 4 teams are better than an undefeated CC squad. I'm not going to give you some bold take about how, they're finding ways to win, like a 4-1 victory is some kind of fluke or something. I'm not going to put out, my PD's rankings where the Shamrocks are 4th or 5th behind teams they've already beaten. CC is the best team in the state until they're not the best team in the state. I will say, I think the gap has closed a little bit in past years. The MIHL is going to be tough as always. I think Brighton is capable of beating CC. I mentioned that earlier. I think more teams this year than in past years have the ability to be competitive with CC. That's kind of what I meant by that. But all that really says to me is a team or two might actually score on them in the playoffs this time around. So looking around the league, I've talked about U of D a decent amount this fall. They're going to be deep this year with a ton of talent. Carter Kate, Tommy Angel, Henry Belazia, Paul Terrio coming in as well. The Cubs are going to be really dangerous. I like them a lot. Brother Rice, obviously, Rice and CC, that rivalry is the best in high school hockey, and that's one the Warriors always get up for outright. Jack Cassidy, Johnny Coons, that's their kind of leadership group on the team there. I really liked guys like Roman Valaire, Nick Hadji, Cam George. Getting to see those guys at the MHA this fall, I really liked how they were. Turner England, maybe their best option in goal that they've had in years. So Rice lost a lot, right, with guys like Marone and Rosa. So I think there's some question marks. I'll be a little curious to see what they look like this season moving forward. But ultimately, that program it absolutely reloads. Sometimes you don't know what's coming in until last minute, and then boom, they land a couple AAA kids, and the JV kids from the JV program have developed that you weren't quite aware of, and Rice just keeps humming along, business as usual. So with all the hockey prospects that are in that school system, obviously they're going to be a contender year in and year out. So Rice is still one to look for as always. I think Coach John LaFontaine and Cranbrook went through some growing pains last year with a really young squad. They bounced back. I think they bounced back big from a 7-win season last season. I think the Cranes could double that win total this winter. Roman Sicko is one of my favorite defensemen in the senior class this year. Trenton, Orchard Lake, De La Salle, they're all kind of that middle tier for me there in the MIHL. But those are some of the blue bloods of Michigan high school hockey, and always mainstays at the top of the state rankings. People have raved about Will Keene for the Eaglets. He's just a junior, got a couple games under his belt, got a couple varsity games under his belt. But talks of him potentially being in the mix as the top goaltender in the state. So a lot of potential there. And obviously, if your best player is in goal, that's going to give you a chance night in and night out. Trenton graduated just 5 seniors last spring. That's one of their smallest outgoing classes in recent memory. But I also feel like, and I can't quite figure out why, but maybe there's some uncertainty a little bit with the Trojans. I just, are they lacking a little bit of that star power in the lineup that they've had over the last couple of years where, who's going to be that go-to guy when they need a big play or they need a clutch goal? I feel like Trenton's always had that in the lineup, and I'm not sure I could pinpoint who that guy is right now for you. And so I just think there's some question marks there, but obviously Trenton is one of those programs that you're never going to count out. So all those teams I think could make things interesting there, obviously, but CC ultimately is the obvious pick to me as the MIHL champ yet again for obvious reasons. So a couple dates I want to get to here, if you give me a second. One date to remember, obviously, Rice versus CC on, I believe, Thanksgiving Eve, as always. I went into great detail with that matchup in the blog on pdspicks.com. I believe that game in particular is at Rice. So that's one of those, there's going to be a home crowd, home ice advantage there for sure. It'll be a buzzing atmosphere for obvious reasons. Even if I think CC has more talent, some of that, sometimes the emotion and energy of a home game can be the equalizer there in a pretty big rivalry in series. And as I mentioned, England having him in net, he can neutralize. If you have that weapon in net that can neutralize a high-powered offense, it can make things ugly, scrappy, 2-1 game late in the third period. What happens, kind of thing. So that's going to be a sneaky good matchup, and obviously you can get a lot more details on that on the website. Another matchup, and I haven't done this yet with any of the conference previews, highlighting two matchups, but another matchup I did want to talk about was still involving CC when they travel to U of D near the end of the season. It'll be the second time these two teams meet, so there's going to be some familiarity. You'll get to get some real life game experience and comfort level with the line matching and maybe exploiting some of those mismatches in the rematch, that type of stuff. Obviously, I told you how high I've been on the Cubs this year. That game goes down February 19th, or no, February 9th, excuse me. I could see that being a bit of a trap game on the road. U of D having an entire season to gel and grow as a team. I certainly don't feel comfortable picking against CC, but I gotta imagine, Coach Paul Moretz will have the Cubs in peak performance by then, and they're going to give the Shamrocks their best shot by that time with the talent they've got, and by the end of the season they're going to be playing some of their best hockey at about this time in the schedule, I would think. So that's one you're going to want to keep an eye out for as well. So that was it. That felt kind of quick. I guess we're going on about a half hour though. So a couple items I want to tease for the next few weeks. I mentioned on Twitter this week, I took my first crack at assembling my annual 100 names to know in high school hockey. The third annual, semi-annual. I was out of commission there for a few years, but we're back now, better than ever now, and obviously excited. Top 100 names to know returning to Michigan high school hockey. I am set and ready probably to reveal that list, not on next week's pod, but the pod after that. That would put us timing wise. We'd be dropping that right before regular season action starts. So that feels kind of right to me there. For next week, the plan is to unveil PD's preseason poll. You got to love the alliteration there. I'll give you my top 25 teams heading into the season. We'll talk teams, potential, over under win totals. I mentioned a couple of them here on the episode tonight, and we'll get into a bunch more. I don't think I'm going to do a top 25 all season long. I'm going to cut it at top 10 as we get into the season. But to start the season, right out of the gate, I'll get you a preseason top 25. How about that? So I'll break all that down on next week's episode. And then the following week, like I said, we'll go one level deeper and feature the top 100 list. So be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple and Spotify, connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, so you can keep up on everything we're doing there. Plus, pdspicks.com, your home for everything youth hockey in the state of Michigan, high school, AAA, or otherwise. So until next time, skate hard, have fun. I'll see you at the rink soon.